Everyone thinks they know the Amazons. Fierce women warriors, man-haters who built a civilization all their own. Legends painted them as incredibly cruel, and the most famous myth of all claims they sliced off a breast to get a better shot with a bow. But all of that is little more than a Hollywood fantasy, built on the fears of ancient Greek men. The truth, buried beneath the steppes of Eurasia, is far more complex, stranger, and more brutal. And it forces us to ask one simple, yet fundamentally uncomfortable question. If they despised men so much, how the hell did their nation even survive? How did they carry on their line? Imagine an entire society built on a biological paradox. A culture that celebrates strength, independence, and the total dominance of women. But this society has a fatal flaw, an expiration date of just one generation. To survive, they inevitably needed men. And the way they solved this problem gave birth to the darkest and most enduring legends. The ancient Greek historian Herodotus, the father of history and perhaps the greatest storyteller of his time, wrote that once a year, the Amazons would meet with a neighboring tribe, the Gargarians. He stressed that these weren't romantic dates or marriage alliances. They were cold, purely functional encounters with a single, practical goal: conceiving the next generation of warriors. After this ritual, Herodotus writes, the fate of the children was decided in advance, without a shred of sentiment. Girls, seen as priceless assets, were kept by the tribe to be raised as new warriors. But the boys, their fate was grim. They were either blinded and maimed, rendered incapable of war, or simply returned to their fathers, like an unwanted byproduct. Other sources, like the historian Diodorus Siculus, paint an even darker, more sadistic picture. They allegedly just broke the newborn boy's arms and legs, so they could never challenge the power of women. For centuries, these gruesome stories have shaped our image of the Amazons. Cruel, immoral, and unnatural. They were the perfect other, the barbaric antithesis to the enlightened, patriarchal Greek world. It was brilliant and incredibly powerful propaganda. But what if all this cruelty was nothing more than a fabrication? What if it was just a horror story, told by men for men? In the late 20th century, thousands of years later, archaeologists working in Russia and Kazakhstan began excavating ancient Scythian burial mounds. They expected to find the graves of kings and male warriors, but instead, they found something that would turn the Greek accounts completely on their head and force scholars around the world to question the myths. They expected to find the tombs of Scythian kings, and they did. But nearby, in the very same necropolises, there were other graves. Inside lay skeletons that anthropologists definitively identified as female, and beside them were not mirrors and necklaces, as was customary for the time, but a full warrior's kit, heavy battle axes, the akinakes, a deadly short sword, and quivers packed to the brim with lethal arrows. And on the bones themselves, the marks of battle wounds. This was the first irrefutable physical proof. Warrior women really did exist. The legend had become flesh and blood. But this sensational discovery didn't answer the main question. It only made it sharper and more complex. If the warrior women were real, does that mean their inhuman rituals were real too? To find the answer, we need to forget about Greece for a moment. The Greeks wrote about the Amazons as distant, mythical barbarians, foreigners to them. The true homeland of these women wasn't the sunny coast of Turkey, but the vast, harsh steppes of Eurasia. This was the world of nomadic peoples we collectively call the Scythians, and later the Sarmatians. And in this world, the rules were completely different. This was a world where a person's value wasn't determined by their gender, but by their usefulness to the tribe. Survival here depended on real skills. A woman had to know how to ride a horse and shoot a bow just as well as a man, simply to protect her home, her children, and the herds while the men were away on a hunt or a raid. In such a harsh environment, a rigid division of gender roles wasn't just a luxury. It was a direct path to extinction. And the archaeology fully supports this. Nearly a third of all Scythian Sarmatian graves from the 5th to 3rd centuries BC that contain weapons belong to women. This wasn't an anomaly, it was the system. This leads to a shocking conclusion. They weren't a separate nation of man-haters. They were an integral part of their people, but with a special, combat-ready status. They were wives, mothers, daughters, and sisters, who, if necessary, could run an enemy through with a spear at a full gallop. But this realization creates an even bigger mystery. So what about those reproductive rituals? If they weren't living in isolation but within their own tribes alongside men, why would they need these strange, formalized meetings with outsiders? The answer, it turns out, lies not in biology, but in the realm of high politics. Modern anthropologists, studying nomadic cultures and their traditions, propose a new, far more logical theory. The annual meetings may not have been a biological necessity, but a crucial and sacred political ritual. Imagine two tribes, constantly competing for grazing lands and water. Instead of endless war, they form a strategic alliance. And this alliance isn't sealed with a signature on paper, but with the most reliable seal of all, shared children. This was a form of exogamy, marrying outside your group, taken to the absolute extreme. The warrior women, the elite and the pride of their tribe, would enter into temporary unions with men from another clan to produce children who would become living symbols of peace and cooperation. This changes the entire picture. The ritual wasn't about lust or hatred for men. It was about high diplomacy, about the survival and prosperity of their entire people. Some scholars take it even further, suggesting this was a form of matrilineal succession, where kinship, property, and status were passed down strictly through the mother's line, and the father played only a temporary, ritualistic, yet honoured role. But this elegant theory leaves the darkest question unanswered. If the ritual was so pragmatic and calculated, what did they do with the boys? The Greeks couldn't have invented these horrifying stories out of thin air. Something must have been their source. The answer is, again, pragmatic and logical, but without the primitive cruelty the Greeks described. If a child was the living symbol of an alliance between two tribes, then its destiny likely depended on its gender. The girls remained with their mother's clan to become new warriors, the carriers of the bloodline and guarantors of the clan's strength. And the boys, they were, in all likelihood, sent with honour to their father's tribe. This wasn't exile or abandonment. It was the ultimate act of strengthening the alliance. The boy became not just a son, but a living link, a constant reminder of the treaty, a bridge between two peoples. He would be raised in his father's tribe, knowing his mother was a powerful warrior from an allied clan. Any aggression against her people would now be a betrayal of their own son. No murder, no cruelty. Just cold, far-sighted, strategic calculation, worthy of the greatest diplomats of this investigation, separating historical truth from convenient myths, challenged what you thought you knew. Make sure to subscribe to our channel We have more stories coming about civilizations whose laws and customs defy everything we consider normal. And now, for the big question. We've discovered that the Amazons' forbidden ritual wasn't an act of hatred, but a calculated tool for survival. So, what do you think our modern society, so obsessed with romance, can learn from such ruthless pragmatism? And is that a lesson worth learning? Let us know your honest opinion in the comments below. Stay with us if you're ready to look into the past without illusions. Until the next story.